This balloon racer sample file was designed in Tinkercad and previously sent to Fusion 360, where we modified the design further. We're now ready to apply joints to create a mechanical relationship between each part. In Fusion 360, the browser lists all objects in your assembly. This includes components, bodies, sketches, origins, joints, construction geometry, and more. You control the visibility of each object by turning the visibility icon on and off. Before we can apply joints in Fusion 360, it's important to note that joints can only be applied to components and not individual 3D bodies. When your file is first inserted from Tinkercad, it will list all 3D bodies on the same level. You can quickly turn each 3D body into a component by right-clicking on the Bodies folder, followed by Create Components from Bodies. Upon creation, I recommend renaming all of your components. Select Component once to highlight it and a second time to edit the name. You can also right-click and select Rename. Renaming each component will make it easier to apply joints to the appropriate part. We now have components that represent each part of our design. The topmost node in the browser is the default component that exists in every design. This is now considered an assembly since we have individual components nested underneath. In its current state, we can click and drag each part and you'll find it moves freely. Joints will allow us to restrict the degrees of freedom so parts can only move as intended. I'll revert the position to move everything back. Fusion 360 has two different types of joints, a standard joint command and the as-built joint command. These commands are very similar, with the key difference being that as-built joints are applied when the parts are already in their desired location. Contrary, joints will move the parts to the newly defined position. In our case, the wheels and axles are in the correct position, so we can use the as-built joint command. We'll start by selecting one of the front wheels and the axle. After defining the two components, we can choose the motion type. The rigid motion will lock components together and removes all degrees of freedom. After selecting OK, we can double check this by moving the wheel. Notice the axle is now locked to the wheel. I'll revert the position and repeat the as-built joint command. Repeat this process for the remaining three wheels, joining them to their corresponding axles. After applying the joints, you'll notice that we have a joints folder in the Fusion 360 browser. This will list all of the joints in our assembly. Let's now finish the assembly by applying a standard joint command to the axle and the car body. We'll use the standard joint command as the axle may not have been perfectly centered in Tinkercad. Once active, you'll notice we have to first apply a snap for a joint origin. This is how we define the position relative to the second component. Start by selecting where the joint origin snaps to the center of the axle. I'll hide the front wheel so we can see the axle. As I hover my mouse over the axle and hole, you'll see that we receive additional points to snap to. We'll select the corresponding center. Notice this moves the axle to align to the two selected joint origins. We can apply an offset to move the axle to the desired position. I'll apply a negative offset of 5.5 millimeters, which results in the axle aligning with the two outer wheels. Note that you may need to use the flip icon to change the direction of your joint origin. Before selecting OK, we'll head to the Motion tab. It's here that we can define the motion type for standard joints. Change the motion to revolute and watch the axle revolve around. Let's select OK and turn the wheel's visibility back on. Notice the revolute icon is represented with a different glyph. We can right-click on the glyph or on the joint in the browser to animate the joint relationships. This allows you to test your joints in motion. You'll also find the entire assembly will now move around when you click and drag on any part. You're now ready to create assemblies using Fusion 360's joint command.